So the mom says to her little boy, "Son, I need the broom, and it's out there on the porch." And he said, oh no, I can't go out there. I'm afraid. She said, "Why are you afraid?" He said, "Because it's dark." She says, "Well, honey, God's out there." He said, "Oh, okay then." So he goes over and he opens the door and he says, "God, if you're out there, would you please bring me the broom?" You know, we're always asking God to do something for us that often we're unwilling to do ourselves. And the universe probably thinks, "Gosh, what else do you want? You know, moon, stars, perfect weather. I mean, spoiled life. I mean, really, you want me to do the other for you too?" Part of the beauty of our own humanity is to live with natural laws to prove to ourselves that through working with our own consciousness, we're able to achieve great things, right? There's so much language when people talk about success or not success. They say, you know, "I was lucky." I don't really believe in luck. I think lucky is a good name for a horse or a pet, right? People will go, "Well, I'm jinxed." Well, you know, my family had issues, so therefore I have them. When we look at who we are in New Thought, we have one word, and it's called inheritance. You have inherited the right to work with natural laws to create the most ridiculous, amazing life that you would ever want. So, that being said, I read over the weekend about a young man that he's in his senior year, weighs 235 pounds. He's on the front defense line, and he is the co-captain of the football team. Very successful, and he's deaf. And he's deaf. And they had brought in someone that signs to him so he can understand. You see, in New Thought, we don't believe in handicaps. We don't believe in we spend our whole lives focusing on our limitations. We see what we can move into. You know, you look at Jessica up here singing Legally Blind. Yeah. Right. But what does she do with that gift? She makes us all who often physically see, not really see from the heart, you see. You look at a number of people in our congregation that are marked as limited, but because they believe something greater about themselves and they believe in natural inheritance, they are not buying into that. You see, because principle is not bound by precedent, which simply means principle doesn't wait for one person to do it in order for thousands of other people to do it. It means it never has had to prove itself to anything or anyone for it to be materialized and for it to be realized in the physical dimension. As a matter of fact, how many of you have some kind of dream or some kind of thought or some kind of healing that you've never had before and it's on your mind and you'd like to have it? If principle is not bound by precedent, in my opinion, you're so much better off if you've never realized it and you've never materialized it before. Because if you even came close to it, you're going to be too busy comparing your past to who you are right now, you know? And you're going to go, "Well, back then, 25 years ago, I had that thing, and then I did that with that thing, and I don't have that thing again, and then we got divorced, that thing, So, we spend that time in that comparative essence of ourself, where if principle's not bound by precedent, there's never been a healing in this department before, it's mine to have, right? I believe in the infinity of God. I believe in that energy. I believe in that essence, and it's mine to do, and I answer that call. When I use these, I know many of you, especially thinking style, are always curious, am I ever going to get to the title of the talk? I found it. Well, I did find it. And what the other law is that's so important that we teach here all the time is the law of cause and effect. What you think, you create. What you talk about, you live about. If you talk about and you plant orange trees, you don't get a mango tree. If you plant mango seeds, you don't get an orange tree. If you want love, you plant love. If you want success, you plant success. If you want a lot of funds to come to you, then put your funds in what you believe in. It's all about the law of cause and effect that is very, very powerful, because thoughts held in mind produce their own kind. And so when you're looking at some of the externals in your life, of your family, your relationship, how it's going, do you believe in what your parents had? Are you following their model? Or do you believe principles not bound by precedent, and you're here to create a magnificent relationship in life like no one has ever seen? And that's it. And how do I know this? You might wonder, how do I know this? Well, many, many years ago, when a lot of the New Thought centers were going around, they were posting e-news, how do we get people to come to our community? How do we get people to come to our community? Like some people say, how do I get more financing? Oh, how do I get more love in our lives? And we kind of got together as a group and we said, we aren't working with that form. If that's the form you're working with, you're always working in lack. We decided to create a form that we are the greatest spiritual community in the world. Right? And we are now currently feeling that form. That's not ego. That's about putting a command on the universe and say, let's go, let's feel it. Let's show what the universe can do. So in your own life, look at the template that you continue to give the universe. And look at the cause and the conversation that you keep putting in there. You look in your bank account, you feel like nobody's home, then that's what you're feeding. If you give thanks that you have more than you know how to spend, then that's what you're feeding. We have the same time we had at all ages of our lives. It's the same 24 hours. But what is the form? How are you using cause and effect with that? Does that make sense? Are you with me? I'm feeding off of what we talked about last week. If you weren't able to attend last week, it kind of all goes together and make a lot more sense for you. You can watch it on Facebook Live. It's on there. But we're talking about your soul activating your own truth. There's a little girl that after church, she was with her mom, and they're riding down the road, and she said, that preacher, he confused me. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, the preacher said that God is so big. And the mom said, yeah, that's right. And then the preacher said, and God's inside of you. Mom says, yeah, that's right. And she said, well, wouldn't God come poking through? So, hello, okay. Anyway, moving along, that's the essence, right? If we believe that, if we believe universally that God is infinite and God is big, we believe God is inside of us, then we would be a big and mighty presence into the world, wouldn't we? We would be a beautiful world. In earthquake care, I read something the other day that said, when you focus on rocks, you're focusing on the past. When you focus on flowers, you're focusing on the future. But when you're modeling and teaching, you're focusing on transforming the right now. I'm mindful of a story with Eckhart Tolle when he talked about the new earth and all his work. You may not remember or recall that when he was a young adult in 1977, he was so into depression, he was thinking and contemplating suicide and wondering if he wanted to be here or not. And he said he was over to the side and he kept thinking about, I don't really like my life. And I don't really like myself, and I don't really like who I am, and I feel limited, and I'm limited financially, and I'm limited this way, and I'm limited that way. And all of a sudden, he had like that he had this. He realized that it wasn't the self that he didn't like. It was the mind-made I about the self that had caused so much confusion and disharmony. You see, because the self is a capital S. It is spirit. It has all the connections one could ever dream of. It's why someone that's deaf can play football, why someone legally blind can bring us all to tears and to our knees. It's why you can go from having very little to having a whole lot of anything, because you're working from another set of principles. My brother called me one time and he said, Sis, I really need your help. And it really means a lot. I don't know about you. My family doesn't ask for my advice that often. And so it really means a lot. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he said, well, I have this issue. He said, it's new. He said, I live right down the road from Dad, and every afternoon, right before dinner with my family, Dad comes by and says, Nelson, come on, get in the car. I need you to go help me down at the farm. And my brother said, and it's every day, every afternoon, I've worked full time, I just got home, and there he is. He says, Nelson, come and go with me. And he said, I don't know how to tell him no. And I said, oh, I know what to do. I said, when he comes tomorrow and he pulls up in the driveway, he says, Nelson, get in the truck, I want you to help me. Then you just say, I'm glad to do it. But when we get back, I need you to help me move that load of wood behind the house. And he said, Sis, I kind of doubted you. He said, but I haven't seen Dad since. And so what we were referring to is another law, the law of reciprocity. It's who we are in our humanity. You hug me, I'm going to hug you. Oh, you give of your essence. Oh, I feel like this. Let us do it to each other. Let us have this experience. Let us come from a place of giving and honoring. It's like having a wonderful waiter, and don't multiply the statistics of what you give as a tip. Give a whole lot more. It's the law of reciprocity. It's about what you give to life rather than what you're taking. We've all gone through moments in life where we just live in a place of, I'm here to take. But after a point, we must identify with the necessity that says, I'm here to give. Say that with me. I'm here to give. Write a handwritten note. Tell someone thank you. Pick up the phone. Put those deposits in your relationships all around you. I've seen it thousands of times. When there's issues with family or relationship or a bank account, it's because somebody somewhere stopped giving and cut off that flow. And so that flow is essential for each and every one of us in our lives, and to multiply our good 100-fold. Yes? And so in that space, there's a story in closing of an elderly man that people pass him at the nursing home and said, Sir, have a good day. And he said, oh, thank you. He said, but you know what? They're all good days. They're all good days because I've decided that they're good. They're all good days because I'm affirming in prayer that they are good. And he said, and I got that from studying the book of Genesis. If God created one day at a time, so can I, and so shall I, and I will do it well. Bless you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.